Vanquish is a game that obtained a cult following whilst performing poorly in the market. Its low sales killed the game's chances at a sequel, despite it being left on a cliffhanger designed to set up for a sequel. Its dedicated group of fans like myself claim this to be a lost classic that deserved more attention. It got its well-deserved second chance with a remaster onto PC and PS4 in a bundle mixed with Bayonetta. It got its second chance to impress the people who missed it the first time. But why is Vanquish so beloved if nobody knows what it is? It came out at a time where third-person action cover shooters were completely oversaturated in the market, and was viewed as a Japanese company trying to appeal to a Western audience, but in reality, it merely takes the templates of cover shooters and advances the genre with its own takes and Platinum Games' charm and style. Vanquish's style sounds dumb on paper, but in practicality it actually helps its over-the-top natures and creates a different experience in the genre. The rocket power slides is the most obvious example of its quirky personality, but it goes deeper with its AR modes and cheesy action voice lines.
More like getting good and looking like an asshole.
But subtle details as well, like swapping weapons that actually transforms the weapon, or smoking a tactical cigarette that distracts enemies. It's a quirky Japanese take on a mostly westernized genre that became a rarity over time. Its unlocked frame rate in its PS4 and PC remaster does advance the game to a better standard, but I recently played the inferior version on hard mode on the PS3 version, locked at 30 FPS, and still enjoyed every second of the game. Before we get further into the video, if you've enjoyed so far, please consider liking and subscribing or leaving a comment at the end. It helps out the channel's reach considerably and shows me that my time making this video has also made somebody happy. Platinum Games brilliantly executes action games, and Vanquish is no exception. Here the shooter mechanics are fused with fluid action movements chained together to avoid damage, whilst also dishing out as much damage as possible during a slowed time. You can play Vanquish traditionally if you wanted, hiding behind cover and popping out to shoot enemies like it's Gears of War. But the most exhilarating experience comes from its two main mechanics. The rocket slide creates high-speed movement, and fused with the time-slowing AR mode, you can combine them in all sorts of ways, whilst manoeuvring across terrain or slowing time to carefully place your shot on that enemy annoying you from far away, or to focus fire at bosses' weak points. The combinations are seemingly endless, and the more you invest yourself into its capabilities, you start to appreciate the spectacle this game displays, and notice how the game never slows down. I think it's an extremely unique way to add a sense of adrenaline, especially when this can be used anytime. If you shoot while sliding or strafe while aiming, you will enter this slow down time and use it to your advantage. You can also get a real sense of time slowing down when you pay attention to your surroundings. Those missiles and bullets that was killing you before are now slowed in the air, and you can actively avoid them at will. This part alone is what creates that adrenaline rush. You are so fast that bullets are slow. The power suit you have throughout the entire game is equipped with another subtle, interesting mechanic. You'd notice you have no health bar displayed on the screen, but when you take damage, you'll notice the green lights across Sam's power suit will turn orange or red. The suit displays your current health, and it also has a cooling feature. When you overuse your power suit, it has to cool down before using it again, and steam can be seen coming out of the power suit whilst cooling down. Overall, Vanquish is simply one of those games where its focus is to make the player feel as cool as possible whilst playing it. My biggest flaw with Vanquish is its lacking and confusing score feature that felt ignored in the midst of a focus that was clearly invested into the gameplay. Vanquish is a top-notch game with a story that's best described as an 80s action parody, with cheesy voice lines, intense action-packed gameplay, and cutscenes with a straightforward story. The story involves a military war between the USA and Russia, with Russian robots trying to capture a space colony and using its solar-powered lasers to wipe out American cities. So the president sends Marines and main protagonist Sam Gideon to the space station to stop the Russians' takeover. Sam is equipped with an augmented reality suit, which is what allows him to have these superpowered capabilities. The majority of the game is essentially a trek from one piece of a space station to the next, clearing out waves of enemies and bosses along the way, whilst discovering the mastermind behind the attack in a constant ego battle with Lieutenant Colonel Robert Burns, who spends the entire game trying to outperform each other. Vanquish is a nice contrast to the games of the time, who took their stories way too seriously and pushed edgy dark graphics to audiences. Vanquish is a breather that focuses on pure enjoyment and feeling awesome rather than telling a complicated narrative. The story begins with San Francisco being hit by a solar-powered weapon, completely and gruesomely obliterating the electronics, infrastructures, and its people. The attack was made by the Order of the Russian Star, which is now the only authority across Russia. They displayed their power to the world and invites the USA to join the Russian state. They threaten the destruction of New York City in 10 hours, and the only way to save it is to completely surrender to the Order. In response, the president deploys an armada of soldiers to the space colony station in order to stop the Russians' takeover and regain control of this new weapon. There was a coup in Moscow that was led by the Order, and now has complete authority over Russia. Now the Order currently has control over Providence SC-01 upon the space colony, led by a Red called Zaitsev. Here we meet the main protagonist, Sam, sent by DARPA to tag along the mission. DARPA is under the authority of the President of the United States and works separately to the soldiers on board the colony. A countdown of 8 hours remains until New York is wiped out. The professor who designed the weapon says that the Russian military plans on using it to wipe out the entirety of the USA, and that America was betrayed by one of its own. The ship carrying Sam and the Colonel narrowly land onto the colony, and immediately it's overrun with gunfire and explosions from the Russian robots. Advancing through the mission gate is primary one, but waves of enemies and turrets and vehicles block the way. Once landing on the dock, Elena warns of the danger ahead. After killing waves of enemies and advancing through the area to breach the gate, enemy transports deploy along with the Russian KNRBO Argus robot, which has been the cause of the political arms control debate. The Argus acts as our first boss fight and takes strategy rather than guns blazing. It can shoot deadly lasers, explosive missiles, and rapid-fire bullets. Targeting its weak joints will make it stumble and reveal its core. Dealing enough damage to the core will eventually force it into its transformation. Its attacks become deadlier, but focusing fire at its weak points and core will eventually render it useless. Now we can finish it off in a dramatic fashion. Advancing through the gate will take you to an area where soldiers have been taken hostage and tortured as a trap. Sam solely takes responsibility to save these soldiers, and one by one you succeed with newer stronger enemies to kill along the way. The team is trapped in the elevator and has no choice but to escape to the next area, where the Colonel shows his true colours again and isn't afraid to leave any man behind. Sam makes up for this, and the mission is to rescue the soldier. Now we've got to clear the transport route and eliminate all enemy forces again. New enemies appear, most notably the tanks that pack a punch but have a weak spot on their backs. We finally reach the underground tunnel used for transport units and have to escort and protect the armoured vehicle. Along the way will be large units of enemies and large self-exploding drones called jellyfish, as well as thick bridges you have to manually blow up with explosives so the armoured vehicle can proceed. It's a refreshing breather compared to the rest of the fast-paced act, and is a welcome change so each mission doesn't come too repetitive. Once the armoured vehicle reaches the end, it will blast open the gates, which opens a path to the core of the colony. The only way to pass is through an elevator guarded by enemies of all sizes. Even along the elevator journey, more waves of enemies come to stop you. At the top of the elevator, we finally get some actual story and cutscenes. Professor Candide is being held hostage by a mysterious red cyborg. This is Zaitsev, and begins rapidly avoiding all attacks to start a battle with Sam. Our second boss fight begins with a Zaitsev bogey clone, who flies around the area rapidly with quick blasts and melee attacks. It ends with dramatic quick-time events and Zaitsev retreating with his allies. We advance up the next elevator into Act 2 and begin Mission 1 outside under enemy fire and new automatic cover robots until we reach a conveyor belt room. An ongoing room of moving conveyors with a lot of obstructions for cover and rushes of enemies, where at the end you find an area overrun with enemy RIs jamming the control interfaces. Vanquish is filled with action-packed gameplay that can sometimes feel repetitive despite its mechanics. That's not the fault of the gameplay, it's due to the lack of story. However, when cutscenes do play, they often reboot the investment and remind us a story is present, no matter how small, and it can still be enjoyable since it helps expand the context of a location and events to support the gameplay. I think it does this fairly well, using cutscenes to support the gameplay rather than a separate, more common use of telling a complex story. One example is our next cutscene where Elena spots oncoming aircrafts and alerts us of their presence and urges the team to get aboard the loading dock to escape. This cutscene acts as a great bridge between the gameplay we've seen so far to a newer type of level that adds a little more depth to the mission structure and emphasises my argument that the cutscenes in Vanquish are designed to support the focus on gameplay. The next mission takes place on board this moving convoy with a view of the entire colony in the horizon, which is kind of beautiful in a very interstellar way. But the aircrafts rapidly approach your convoy and have to fight them off long enough to depart. Throughout this mission, several waves of flying enemies approach and you're stuck still, forced to fight using your own equipment and turrets on board. Once you lose the flying enemies, another convoy approaches, similarly to your own, filled with enemies that can traverse the tracks and maneuver above you, creating a badass fight scene. An emergency crash is imminent when the track becomes damaged, and not being able to slow down in time, the convoy derails, halting your escape. Put to a complete stop, surviving several convoys of enemies leaves Sam impatient for a way out, and decides to capture a convoy for himself in an epic quick-time event, followed by Elena taking control, leading in a badass battle in the skies. And the convoy Burns was escaping on falls down. Sam escapes cleanly, speeding into a tunnel at the northern complex of the city. I enjoy this scene a lot. It's fast paced and cinematic whilst also seamlessly transitioning into a moving battle against enemy convoys until escaping the tunnel. Elsewhere, another Argus robot is spotted attacking troops and causing explosive havoc. A ship is spotted by the Argus and blasts barrages of missiles towards the ship, and inside is Sam, forced to make an emergency bail. The Argus robot is attacking the airport to stop the flow of American troops into the colony, and Sam makes haste after his cigarette through buildings filled with small robots catching him off guard. Eventually, Sam enters the airport and finds not one but two Argus robots awaiting him, but a mysterious figure attacks and drops into the airport to support Sam. We are fighting two Argus robots simultaneously, both being different forms of the same boss we struggled with earlier in the game. We must manage to multitask our efforts into focusing on the weak points of one boss, all whilst covering from and dodging attacks by both bosses. Managing the ammo capacities and lack of health can be intense here. The breaks in typical Vanquish action is interrupted by some interactive quick-time events that I welcome in every game. I need more of these, and Vanquish does them dramatically and satisfyingly. Elena informs us of a few friendly colony forces still resisting enemy attacks. Their communications were cut off, but may have information to help Sam and the Colonel locating enemy positions, so they move forward in search of survivors. A jamming signal is restricting the support team's navigation systems and requests we manually turn it off in order to advance through to the central colony. Ahead of us is a large hill with enemy defences and turrets blocking our path to the jamming signal. After long battles with enemies outside and inside their defences, at the top of the next hill is the control room for the gate past the defence base. But the enemies put locks on it, resisting any hacking interferences, and the only answer now is to defend the demo team while they set up charges and blow up the gate. Our first breather for a while is displayed with a beautiful view of the colony. Destruction rains from the sky from a KNRB-0 at the top of the hill and attempting to stop us from moving forward. To the left is a gate that Elena will open for us to escape, but the Argus robot still needs to be dealt with. Sam hijacks a convoy ship, but Elena's nav system is still jammed, so Sam flies it manually, being chased by intense highly explosive tracking missiles, and decided to lure them towards the Argus robot and kamikaze the ship into its core, making a narrow escape. The large building in the sky firing solar-powered lasers is the jammer stopping support. Even those who enter without their nav systems are shot down by the turrets attached. Nothing's getting by unless the jammer is destroyed. but regular fire won't work, so in this makeshift boss fight, we have to eliminate the core. Taking down the turrets will make the fight easier, but could leave you open to harder hitting attacks. At times throughout the fight, enemy reinforcements deploy, with difficult enemies and various attacks. After a long fight and the core is destroyed, troops land on the ground to support the main troops to the central buildings in the city and make way with haste. Back on Earth, the President of the United States speaks to Zaitsev regarding his betrayal during their cooperation. He merely states that cooperation is just a mutual exploitation, and he merely exploited them first. He reiterates the need for USA's unconditional surrender and leaves. Sam and the others have reached the central city plan to advance through to the highway, but first land with a small team to link up with a fire team in the area who are pinned under fire by enemy forces. Moving forward to rescue the fire team in an intense battle gives you little time to appreciate the beauty of the city in the background. Intense waves of enemies approach one after another, in various forms blocking the tracks to the landing zone where the friendly team is waiting. Ahead is a drawbridge and terminal attached to the highway. The drawbridge is closed and must be controlled manually on the other side of the bridge, where Team Super 35 must land and is met with enemy forces again. Right now, Sam is stuck and the transport unit attempting to land must be defended and enemies eliminated. They soon let you cross and enemies from below start breaching the ground with surprise troops. Elena opens the gate connecting to the terminal, where it is completely destroyed. In the horizon, the Colonel spots a 1,000 feet tall Creon battleship locking its sights at Team Bravo 6. Its attack softened the area, allowing easier access for enemy forces, but more importantly, weakens the bearings on the road and begins to collapse. Fighting on a collapsing bridge is just so fucking cool, intense and fast paced. It stands out as one of my favourite missions in the game. Once the road fully collapses, along with the enemies who failed to escape, Elena informs us of a nearby monorail we can use to stealthily advance under the radars of the Creon battleship. The entire level is centered around protecting a monorail transporting you into enemy base. On board are suppressed sniper rifles to destroy searchlights before they discover you, and later, halfway through the mission, you are put to an abrupt stop with a bombardment of enemies targeting you, and you must explode the bridge blocking your way. You continue progressing on the monorail into a mini boss fight with a strong enemy ship where you are restricted to the area of the monorail only. This is a huge contrast to the mission before it, where you are attempting to escape a collapsing bridge while simultaneously shooting enemies. This is very fast paced, high intensity mission where speed is required, whereas the mission preceding it is the closest Vanquish comes to a slow stealth-like mission with intervals of action. This type of pacing is necessary to avoid the feeling of repetition and laziness. It gives you a break in stark contrast of what your senses are so far familiar with. The team makes it to the central station, only to find the Creon battleship was awaiting their arrival. After coming off the backs of a stealth mission, now taking down the Creon battleship is an intense battle as it heads into the central buildings of the city. Marines are overrun with robots and time is ticking fast, clearing enemies away whilst creating chances to blast a railgun into the Creon's leg. The railgun team becomes targeted and scarce while enemy defense is pushed back, and making a hole into the armor needs some heavy firepower. Once the area is cleared, and all that remains is you, the Marines, and the Creon. Focus fire at its core under its legs, and will start a chain reaction that will explode a hole into its leg. The combat team deploy a wire gun to support Sam to safely infiltrate the Creon from the inside. Inside the Creon feels alien compared to the action outside. Inside has very few enemies scattered around as Sam slowly approaches on a small convoy. Many different types of enemies hide and prey on Sam. In sharp contrast to the mayhem that came before, Sam is entirely alone. Inside, Sam finds an unknown enemy that moves swiftly on its feet, and when it dissipates into smaller pieces of itself, another Transformers-esque robot that hastily shoots lasers from its core, revealing its weak point as it does so. While on track to the upper deck, enemies are more alerted of Sam's whereabouts and come in stronger packs defending the drive system. It acts as the heart of the Creon, similar to an engine room would be. Inside is a large siphon with frequent energy blasts that fuels the Creon and can kill Sam in an instant. Traversing this long siphon to the top, Sam meets more enemies alerted by his presence, including some larger, more powerful units. Sam finds an elevator taking him back to the surface of the battleship, where he finds the power line hooked up to the Creon's cannon. Destroying it could cause a critical explosion, taking it down once and for all. Sam fights more enemies than ever, as well as more unknowns, but once he reaches the end, Sam shows his DARPA super strength and pulls the power line right out from the cannon with his own hands, starting a chain reaction, destroying the battleship. In a last escape effort, Sam sprints and leaps away with badass explosions following him, and is caught mid-air by the Colonel flying a jet. The blunt force of the explosion blasts the jet away into a crash landing in a nearby forest. Sam's cigarette break is interrupted by a Marine stationed to escort him to enemy positions, and makes haste through the forest to a nearby enemy base. It took 3 full chapters, but we finally have a long overdue change of scenery. We've had a couple slower stealth missions to break up the pacing, but the maps so far have been quite similarly themed. It's a great change to have this level in a forest woodland area, to not feel so repetitive. This mission also feels like a homage to Halo. I'm not sure if it was, but the game itself is a game very inspired by the Halo series, but this setting gives off that earthy futuristic nature we see within Halo. The deeper we advance into the base, the nature slowly fades away and we ease back into neo-futuristic vibes that take precedence over everything else. This really kicks in at our next boss fight against the buzzard that's defending the control tower located at the other end of the bridge. The control center opens up a watery terrain and some aged infrastructures, which I like how it implies the space colony was built over an extensive period of time as technology advanced through its production. But inside, some of these abandoned buildings, hiding inside another Argus robot, blasting its lasers, displaying its speed, size, and packing a punch with its missiles. At this point, we are pretty familiar with the strategy to take down this boss, but its tight enclosure adds a little challenge, forcing more intensity, which is felt majorly on hard mode. The boss fight ends climactically by shooting into its face while being grasped by its hands and ripping yourself free to finish the blow. Back outside, blocking the gates ahead, are enemy forces who have set up defences with larger robots and tanks. It is non-stop action. As soon as we blast past the gates, more enemies are waiting for us again and again and again, until we reach a bunker where we receive a briefing on the plasma complex up ahead, where the enemies have turned into a lake of fire. Traversing through this tight area is tricky as flames engulf all around you, but the trickiest part of all is the Crystal Viper, dubbed by NATO to be a test assassin RI in the works. It has light reflecting armour that serves both as camouflage and a shield against attacks. Regular attacks render useless unless stunned by an EMP, then it becomes very weak temporarily to regular attacks. Once it dies, it lets off an explosive electromagnetic pulse, damaging miles out, including the plasma energy tank that only exacerbated its blasts, and blew a large hole in the outer wall of the colony, sucking debris from miles away into the vacuum of space. To escape this mess, everybody evacuates to the shelters below the surface in order to safely patch the hole and proceeds to the containment wall control panel. Along the way is a large room where zero gravity controls are faulty and lets debris float around. The room is constantly rotating 360 degrees and displays a peaceful setting of space, even with enemies around us. This is still the most peaceful setting we've had so far, looking into the vast void of space. But oftentimes in media, any sense of peace in space is abruptly interrupted by demonic creatures, this one being the robotic unknown that charges in to kill. This enemy always keeps us on our toes with its quick speed and small chances to deal damage. Once Elena hacks into the system and opens the doors for us, we enter the control room and a conflict brews. The Colonel wants to ensure safety to the crew who made it out, while Sam wants to wait to increase the chances of more survivors. The conflict reaches gunpoint and the Colonel proceeds a colony-wide lockdown anyway. The men, only seconds away from surviving, are trapped outside the gates and suffocate from lack of oxygen. After an argument, Sam goes on ahead, separating from the Colonel. Sam goes on ahead to fight a buzzard defending the central core, while Burns meets up with somebody else, but little time is spent discovering who due to the action up ahead. After the buzzards and Romanoffs defending the gate are defeated, Up ahead is a bridge leading to the microwave control room, guarded by heavy lasers and an array of robots. Nobody can push through with the lasers active, so Sam finds a way to get past and plant explosives onto the cannon to allow the team to safely pass by. Right as the cannons blow up, enemies close in from behind and the support team are under heavy fire. Enemy turrets are at Sam's disposal to defend the team and buy them time. Once everything is clear, Elena opens up the gates to the control room, but will struggle to provide op support much longer due to a build-up of electromagnetic pulses, and up ahead, possibly causing that shock, is another Crystal Viper. During the fight, Burns is under fire and needs backup, so once the Crystal Viper is defeated, Sam orders the team to back up Burns while he advances ahead alone. Inside the microwave control room, Sam finds agitated Professor Candide, who questions Sam's association with the military and doesn't trust the Colonel's intentions. He fortunately stops the microwave laser that was threatening the USA in time, and he turns around in relief to find himself shot. The culprit revealed is Colonel Burns himself, who intends to reactivate the laser and set its target to Moscow in order to avenge his soldiers who died in battle, and an ulterior motive to support the president with an economic stimulus package. They believe that destroying Moscow and the order once and for all will boost the American economy as victors of a war, and considers the horror in San Francisco to be for the good of all Americans. Sam refuses and is overwhelmed by troops ready to kill, and once a shot is fired, he fights back and begins a boss fight with the Colonel. The boss fight involves a lot of troops, but mostly the Colonel running away from Sam shooting from afar. It takes us through a monorail high-speed battle chase, but ultimately ends with the Colonel's demise. Sam is overrun by defences and the Colonel uses his final strength to open the gates to the core. Despite their battle, Sam still intends to save the Colonel and leave together, but he orders Sam to leave. As his dying wish, he decides to take himself out and join his men who died in battle, as it's where he believes he belongs. Zaitsev reveals that the president funded the Order's coup of Russia in order to stimulate both economies with war, and that war is necessary to regain economic footing and reassert world hegemony. Zaitsev merely preemptively defended himself, knowing that the president used them as a pretext for war and planned to take them down after helping them rise. He was using the weapon of mass destruction for defense since he was betrayed, and the betrayed has a right to retribution. The final boss fight to finish off this badass game is in the form of double Zaitsev bogies controlled by him simultaneously. Both bogies have different attack patterns and movements and can be extremely tricky on hard mode. It's filled with badass quick time events and fast paced action, set in the moving core of the space colony with the microwave laser charging rapidly. After you defeat a bogey, Sam orders Elena to remove the safety limits on his suit to unleash its full potential for the rest of the battle. After depleting the final bogey's health, the final quick time event takes place while Sam is in his weakened state due to the safety limiters being removed. On the brink of death, he dodges Zaitsev blade attacks and stealing his weapon to blast him away in slow motion. Zaitsev is away, safe from a distance, controlling the clones remotely, but planted them with tactical nukes in case his plan failed. He would rather blast the entire colony out of orbit than let it fall into American hands. Time is ticking on the tactical nukes, and Sam finds an escape pod with just a few seconds left over and gets caught in the explosion. Elena waits outside, watching the explosion, only to never find Sam's pod on any of her scanners or through the windows. One thing we will ignore for the sake of how fucking cool it is, he avoided all scanners and her own eyes and just appeared randomly behind her inside the ship. Let's ignore that part, but he's all alive and being an aura farming king like always. But that gets interrupted by the explosion's blunt impact forcing their ship away. Elena attempts to comfort Sam on the professor's death, and he responds by questioning the means to his own ideals and compares himself to Burns' actions. But what sets them apart is that Sam saved many more lives. Far away is Zaitsev's control ship where he was controlling the bogies. Inside, he speaks to mysterious figures, claiming his mission was successful and their ascent to power is complete. So now, the next phase begins. Back on Earth, the President faces the guilt of her actions and the lives she sacrificed just to fail. Vanquish is nothing short of a cool game. Its intention is just to feel as badass as possible, whilst delivering a story some might claim to be lacking, but honestly, the game doesn't take its own story too seriously, so why should we? The game is filled with cheesy as hell 80s action lines, and is a parody of the genre it's adapting from. It's filled with stupid comedy all throughout. The best example of not to take the game too seriously is literally the end credits. The entire credit is literally a minigame shooting photos of the developers. It's actually so cute, so fun, and such an original way to make players pay attention to the credits and those involved in developing the game. You even have a little point system to keep you incentivized into shooting. But the game doesn't end here. Like many action games, challenge modes are present that offer difficult replayability. God Hard difficulty is unlocked for the main story, but the challenge mode is a separate set of unlockable missions that offer great challenge that includes many powerful waves of enemies. These are fairly similar, but offer a challenge in different settings, and is actually really difficult. A couple bonus features in the game is the online rankings in the leaderboards for each mission. It helps add some replayability and competition. I also like the upgrade system in the game I forgot to mention earlier. It takes an unconventional route to upgrade your weapons. You can only have equipped 3 weapons at a time, as well as grenades and EMPs. To upgrade said weapon, you must find the same weapon out in the battlefield and pick it up to upgrade your own. However, if you have used the weapon, it will only replenish ammo and not upgrade it. I think it's a really smart way to encourage players to use different weapons and switch pretty frequently, otherwise you'll struggle later on with weaker weapons. An armory list is also available at all times in the pause menu, so you can always see the equipment at your disposal. The focus on its gameplay was clearly a priority during its development process. Some areas may feel lacking due to it, but it still delivers a great and satisfying badass game. Vanquish was Platinum Games' 3rd ever game and was still early days for the company. Their pre-existing Bayonetta engine underwent some changes throughout its development. It was originally planned to be an open world, but shifted into its linear fashion in order to keep the flow of the game controllable in its fast-paced fashion. In a blog from 2010, Hideki Nakata was in charge of the engine running Vanquish's development. He says the Bayonetta engine underwent heavy modifications in order to supply the requests made by game director Shinji Mikami. I want the game to look unlike anything else out there. I want our battlefields to have the overwhelming feeling of a real battle. And Hideki knew that the Bayonetta engine would have to undergo major rendering changes to keep up with the intense gameplay and be sufficient enough to hold such a large amount of interactable enemies, bullets and other projectiles whilst keeping the graphics clear and precise. It really is weird Vanquish is hardly known, but was very well received, averaging reviews of 8 out of 10 and even won a couple Game of the Year awards. Just 1 year after release in 2011, the game sold 830,000 copies, which is quite substantial, and in 2024 amassed a total of 1.3 million sales worldwide due to its remaster on Steam and PS4. The game didn't sell poorly, but its legacy faded quickly. Few remember the brilliance of the game 15 years later, and a select few of us are still holding out hope for a sequel, but Platinum Games' golden era has faded, and they aren't making such standout games anymore. The chances of a sequel are becoming increasingly slim. The main project from Platinum Games I look forward to is Ninja Gaiden 4, being co-developed by Team Ninja and Platinum Games. I do find myself craving some Platinum Games action quite a lot. I'm thinking of trying the Ninja Turtles and Transformers game made by Platinum soon, and retrying Bayonetta 2 later this year. But most importantly, one of my upcoming videos will be on my most anticipated to play game by Platinum Games, Anarchy Reigns. I've been wanting to play this game for over 3 years, I've been listening to the amazing soundtrack repeatedly for years on end. This game is just amazing, and it seems like everything Platinum Games touches just becomes an absolute banger. Make sure to subscribe to stay updated for more video game retrospectives in the future. And if you enjoyed, please let me know below, it would mean a lot.